we don't want a fully formed brief, because you need to include you need to have some kind of collaborative conversation to understand where it is that we're actually headed. I mean, obviously we know we're going to build something over there, but the way that we kind of cross the river, if you will, we'll have to kind of feel where we're going, which is a scary process. And actually, and I think you might make the same argument that that's what makes the best designs, is when you can really understand the collective need, right? And I think the mindset is not fully there yet. Like, I went to a quality design conference, and this was run by one of the ministries, and you had all the major names in the built environment there, 500 plus people, and they ran a workshop on engagement, and it was entitled How to Win the Hearts and Minds. Engagement for a YIMBY, not a NIMBY. And NIMBY being, for people who don't know this terminology, NIMBY is not in my backyard, right? So there is this understanding in the development and architectural world that if you build something, there's going to be a lot of protests, and there's going to be people who say, not in my backyard. Yeah. But from my perspective, that was madness, that at a quality design conference, you would have a workshop on engagement that was purely about winning the honor or winning people's favor, not about, if you do engagement and you do it well, and there's a process for that and an intention of care and of respect, you're going to make the best design. Not you're just going to you're going to get people to do what you want them to do.
I think that's
really madness.
Important. Yeah, that's a really interesting. Madness. Yeah, I think design is vastly misunderstood, and you know, as an architect, I can see, you know, that processes and protocols sometimes are more seen as more important and are vastly restrictive. And you know, when I think of the Royal Institute of British Architects Plan of Work, that was with big fanfare revised and published just I think 5 years ago, and it doesn't, as a deliverable for architects, it doesn't even include engagement. And you think, what planet are you guys on at the Royal Institute?
Yeah.
And so,
well, it is a royal institution, so I mean,
you know, for God's sake, you know. So
who wrote it? What kind of people write this? Is it politicians? Do they have architects writing?
That's the important question.
Well, I would like to know. Yes, but obviously not somebody who really understands and cares about contemporary trends in urbanism, and design, because increasingly, well, often there are. And that sets expectations too. That sets expectations for clients who make reference to the plan of work of how an architect should work.
Yeah, right.
So they think, oh, I've got to get an engagement consultant on board because architects don't do that work. And, you know, that's the biggest cop-out. It's actually design itself, which is the greatest tool to engage people with and around and about. And that's how we tend to work, because, you know, design is absolutely essential, but it's only a design with an open book and an open brief initially that will get people on board. And you know, what still happens quite often, we get briefs through the door, because we work a lot for the public sector, that require us to come up with you know, feasibility studies for regeneration projects, which will then be presented to the public afterwards. And you think, you know, I'm going to put myself in the defensive straight away if I do that, because I will have made decisions, spatial, physical decisions on the future of the city without talking to anybody.
And they should be pissed off, actually.
Yeah, and they should be, and I fully get that. So, you know, it's sometimes, well, we all need to collectively, we do need to educate our clients.
What do you think would be a good solution for that?
You never design anything until you've spoken to people. That's the first thing. You never, ever design anything until you've spoken and until you've listened. And, you know, yes, I think the other thing that's often done wrong is you know, where co-design is being hung out the window as this big amazing thing. I think there's also something dangerous about that, because actually co-design can lead to the lowest common denominator if it's not done properly. Co-design, communities don't tend to be very good designers, and I think you know, from an informed community group, they will learn that you listen to them and that you take their word seriously and that there is trust, and they're quite happy to trust you as a designer to make decisions on their behalf, and that's a much better place to be.
It's so
because
important.
it's also about managing expectations. You know, it's not just about what a community wants. A big part of it is what a community wants, but there is also there's planning, there's policy, there's local policy, there's regional policy, there's national policy, there are environmental standards, there are safety standards. You know, there obviously is the big elephant in the room of who's going to fund that and what their interests are. And it's the architect.
And they have to be involved too as well.
Well,
absolutely. And the
developer needs to be at the table as well.
Absolutely. And I think what again, and this is where I think it's you know it's an exciting and interesting time, because that's, I mean, all of those issues need to be, you need to inform your, you don't want to call them beneficiaries, but the people that you're working with and the people who will be impacted by a lot of these works. And in my experience, yes, the discussions can be robust, and so they should be, and they can be difficult and challenging at times, and that's the city life, for crying out loud. You just got to get on with that. But the quality at the end of it is it's far greater. The quality of the work, the quality of the debate, you know, it's far greater. It has more meaning. There's more depth to it, and I think that, and people appreciate that. You know, they appreciate an urban design team coming along and explaining to them, well, this is the context of this work. Like you mentioned, everything from who the investor is and why and how and what, you know, what the potential is for this particular area. People will appreciate that narrative, that sort of discussion taking place, and them being a part of that, because I mean, and I have seen this where you have that. Well, it's a community-based project, right? And you think, well, okay, that sounds fine. Well, what does that actually mean in practice? Because we are talking about, whether it's public funds or private funds, somebody is taking the risk to actually make these changes, and we have to reflect, and we've got to appreciate, we've got to acknowledge that, we've got to manage that. There's a responsibility for that, and by simply saying, well, this is a community project and we're going to do what people want, it's you know, it's not as simple as that. And to be quite honest, it's quite a lazy approach actually to trying to make places better by just saying, well, it's just a community thing, we go and engage, we have a couple of workshops, and then we make sure whoever gets the architectural brief implements that. You think to yourself, well, you can literally come up with anything, and then you're putting a lot of pressure on a design team and engineers and anything to basically implement something which, for some very practical, technical reasons, may never ever be, or if it is going to happen, it's going to cost a huge amount of money.
Well, that's part of the thinking. You know? That's an issue as well. I think is that the architect is also a stakeholder. I mean, and that's the thing is, like, it's not just about the people who live in that space. They're a very, very important stakeholder. The architect has a studio. They've got to put together a design that works and that they can sell and that they can do future work with. The developer has to create something that's an investment. And the point being is that everyone that's at the table has an individual interest, but there is a collective interest to make a really good design. I think if you asked everyone at the table, hey, do we want the best design that works collectively for everyone? I think everyone could agree with that. But I think that the issue or the challenge is, and in what you're saying is, like, as architects, we're not even expected to be somewhat engaging or to
we're
be
not expected
to be
on the table.
facilitators.
We're not expected to be at the table even. You know, the engagement consultant writes the report, and that's how you get feedback on what you've drawn. And that's such an antiquated way of working. It just really, it's not collaborative. It's not engaging. You don't work as a team. But the other side of the story that Jeffrey just sort of seemed to suggest is it's not always about design, which is interesting too. And these things only come out in conversations. We were working for one of the UK's biggest housing associations on a project in London where they wanted to do lots of infill development on an estate. And they tried with 3 previous architects to get this off the ground, and it had always faltered on the objections from local people who were living in the estate. And so the Housing Association came to us and said, Jan, you know how to work with communities. Can we have another go at this, and can you come up with some solutions? So we went through a long engagement process to make sure we've spoken to lots of people individually, and that we'd really taken them on that journey. And what came out in these conversations was that actually people were not objecting to development. They were objecting to the to the principle that we're developing on their estate, and that then the local authority would be able to nominate residents to those new dwellings where there was great housing need on the estate itself, with overcrowded families and family members having to move out of London. And the moment where we got the local authority to agree that there'd be a local lettings plan where actually people from the estate could move into those new dwellings, all the objections fell away and we had massive support. But without actually speaking to people on the ground what in detail their concerns and their worries were, it wouldn't have ever happened.
Absolutely, and I would also disagree with the wording. I think absolutely that's design, because and I think this is part of the issue with design is the terminology. That's design because from my perspective that's meeting a need, and creating something, whether that's a service, a program, a policy, a space, is essentially design if it's addressing a need. And I think that's part of the issue. Is the language, and architecture I think is partially at fault of this. Is like the designer comes in and makes the spatial decisions, and that's all design. Well, actually, the design is also the ways in which we're supporting interaction. It's the ways that we're addressing the needs of people. In that, I think it's an absolutely fantastic example, because, and that is what should define in the ways in which the development moves forward in a holistic way, right? The communication we use, the policies, everything. So I think it's a great example.